The aliens dropped to their knees, prostrating before the human captain and begging him, "Please don't unleash humanity's ancient fleet into this war. We're sorry we attacked you. We had no idea the power you wielded. Have mercy." The aliens groveled pathetically, but Captain Stephen Collins just sneered down at them from his command chair aboard the state-of-the-art battlecruiser USS Retribution. He turned back to the holographic display, showing the ruthless Pakled Empire obliterating a defenseless hospital ship. Stephen's knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrest. The cowardly Pakleds, led by the notorious warlord Gruss, had been relentlessly conquering and subjugating peaceful worlds across the galaxy for years now. The Galactic Alliance fought them tooth and nail but kept losing ground. In a last-ditch effort, they sent emissaries to Earth pleading for aid. But Stephen had personally told those Alliance wimps to shove it. Earth had a strict isolationism policy ever since First Contact went to shit centuries back. Humanity was done fighting others' battles. At least that's what Stephen thought until he saw that broadcast in a seedy Mars dive bar. That smug prick Gruss had lined up human aid workers and executed them in cold blood, all because they got caught bringing supplies to some backwater colony the Pakleds raised. Gruss looked right in the camera and threatened to kill any humans his forces found, calling them Terran cowards. Stephen walked out of that bar with a fire in his eyes and a single thought screaming in his mind, "This fucking ends now." Gruss and his pack-led dogs needed to be put down like the rabid animals they were. And if Stephen had to drag humanity's ancient, unstoppable war fleet out of storage to do it, then so be it. He would teach that scaly freak the true meaning of cowardice right before he introduced Gruss's carcass to the vacuum of space. Looks like retirement would have to wait. Captain Collins was reporting back for duty. He had a war to win and Pakled asses to kick. Those grey bastards had no clue the hell they just brought down on themselves. They were about to learn what happened when you fucked with humanity. Stephen's boots clanked against the deck plating as he marched onto the bridge of the USS Retribution. His crew snapped to attention, saluting their captain. He waved them off impatiently. "As you were. Navigation set a course for the Pakled front, maximum burn." The navigator hesitated. "But, sir, Earth Command expressly forbid us from—" Stephen cut him off with a glare that could melt steel. "To hell with Earth Command. Those Pakled bastards need to pay for what they've done. Now get us underway before I throw you in the brig for insubordination." "Yes, sir." The nav officer frantically inputted the coordinates. The Retribution lurched as her powerful engines flared to life, propelling the mighty warship toward her destiny. Hours later, a priority transmission pinged Stephen's personal terminal, coded at the highest level of secrecy. He frowned as he plugged in his decryption key. A cloaked figure flickered to life on the screen, features obscured. "Captain Collins, I have urgent information for you," the mysterious person said, voice distorted. "The Pakleds have developed a new weapon of terrifying power, able to destroy entire star systems. You must come to these coordinates immediately to learn more, or countless billions will perish." Coordinates flashed on the screen before the message abruptly cut off. Stephen gripped the edge of the terminal, mind racing. It could be a trap, but if this informant was telling the truth, he couldn't ignore it. He had to act. "Helm, change of plans. Divert us to the following coordinates and make it quick. Something big is going down." The Retribution banked hard as she altered course toward the remote star system. Upon arriving, Stephen gathered an away team and shuttled down to the desolate planet's surface. No sooner had they disembarked the shuttle when a hail of blaster fire rained down on them from the cliffs above. "Ambush, take cover," Stephen bellowed, diving behind a rocky outcropping and returning fire. He glimpsed grey-scaled Pakled soldiers pouring out from hidden entrenchments, a whole platoon of them, and at their head barking orders. "Gruss," Stephen snarled. The warlord met his gaze across the battlefield and flashed a mocking grin. Of course this was a setup. "Did you really think I would let valuable intel slip so easily, Captain?" Gruss called out, as his forces laid down, suppressing fire. "I knew you wouldn't be able to resist investigating. Your predictability will be your downfall." Blaster bolts cracked and sizzled all around Stephen. His team was pinned down, outflanked, outgunned. Damn it, he'd underestimated Gruss. The bastard had played him like a fiddle. He keyed his comm frantically. Away team to Retribution. Emergency evac now. We're under heavy fire, I repeat. We need immediate extraction. Seconds later, the Retribution's transporters flared to life, whisking Stephen and his battered squad to safety. He stumbled onto the pad, uniform singed, face streaked with sweat and grime. On the view screen, Gruss's smug visage loomed. A valiant attempt, Captain Collins, but you've lost. Flee now and I may let you live, until I conquer your precious Earth and enslave your pathetic species. The Packlid Empire will reign supreme. Stephen was about to spit a retort when the bridge lights flickered and died. Then the sickening lurch of the artificial gravity failing. Crew members yelled in alarm as they floated from their seats. Report, Stephen barked. Engines are offline, life support failing. It looks like sabotage, sir, the engineer replied grimly. We're dead in space, and based on our current orbit... He didn't need to finish. They were caught in the planet's gravity well now with no power. They'd burn up on re-entry within hours. Stephen slumped into his chair, numb with shock. Gruss had outplayed him completely. It was over. They were all dead. A klaxon blared. Captain, massive hyperspace signature detected. Unknown vessel dropping out of FTL. It's on an intercept course. Stephen's head snapped up as a gargantuan warship, bristling with guns, filled the view screen. It was a behemoth, dwarfing the Retribution, and it was of human design, ancient but powerful, a relic from a bygone age. This is Captain Nikolai Volkov of the starship Phoenix, hailing the USS Retribution. Looks like you could use a hand, Captain Collins. Prepare to receive our repair drones if you're ready to accept help from the ship that disappeared centuries ago. Stephen gaped at the screen, hardly believing his eyes. The Phoenix, the greatest warship constructed, long thought lost, and her notorious captain somehow still alive. This had to be another trick, a trap within a trap. But what choice did he have? Swallowing his misgivings, Stephen nodded to his comm officer. Open a channel to the Phoenix. Tell Captain Volkov we accept his offer of assistance. Stephen gritted his teeth as he watched the Phoenix's repair drones swarm over the Retribution's battered hull. He still didn't trust Volkov, not completely, but he had no choice. The sabotage had left his ship crippled and vulnerable. They needed the Phoenix's help, whether he liked it or not. As the repairs progressed, Stephen found himself spending more time with Volkov, learning about the enigmatic captain's past. Volkov spoke of a secret fleet, a group of ships that had defied Earth's orders to stand down after the last Great War. They called themselves the Reapers, and they had been hiding in the shadows for centuries, waiting for the day when humanity would need them again. We've been watching the Packlids, Volkov said grimly. We believe Gruss has developed a new weapon, a planet killer capable of destroying entire worlds. Stephen felt a chill run down his spine. A planet killer? The thought was almost too horrifying to contemplate. Volkov leaned forward, his eyes intense. You need to convince Earth to unleash the Reapers, Stephen. We're the only ones who can stop the Packlids. Stephen hesitated. He knew Volkov was right, but the thought of unleashing the Reapers, of plunging the galaxy into an even greater war, it was almost too much to bear. Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Captain, we've got incoming, his tactical officer shouted. It's a massive Packlid fleet, and they're headed straight for us. Stephen cursed under his breath. Gruss had found them. The Retribution was still under repair, in no shape for a fight, and even with the Phoenix at their side, they were hopelessly outnumbered. Attention human vessels, Gruss's voice crackled over the comm. This is your only warning. Surrender now, or be destroyed. Stephen's mind raced. They couldn't run, couldn't hide. But maybe, just maybe, they could still win. He turned to Volkov, a desperate plan forming in his mind. We need to board Gruss's flagship, he said urgently. Disable the planet killer from within, it's our only chance. Volkov nodded grimly. Agreed. I'll take the Phoenix and draw off the bulk of their fleet. You get aboard that flagship and do what needs to be done. Stephen gathered his best fighters and technicians, a small but deadly strike team. They boarded a shuttle and rocketed towards Gruss's flagship, dodging and weaving through a hail of enemy fire. They slammed into the flagship's hull, cutting their way inside with plasma torches. Alarms blared as they stormed through the corridors, engaging Gruss's elite guards in brutal close-quarters combat. Blasters flashed, blades clashed, blood spattered the walls. Stephen fought like a man possessed, cutting down Pakleds left and right. His team pushed deeper into the ship, battling their way to the core, where the planet killer was housed. They burst into the chamber, weapons ready, and froze in horror at the sight before them. The planet killer was no mere weapon. It was a living creature, a monstrous abomination of flesh and technology, and it was waking up. Stephen stared at the creature, his mind reeling. Conventional weapons would never stop this thing. It was too big, too powerful. As the creature's eyes began to open, he knew they were out of time. They needed a new plan, and fast. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Stephen's mind raced as he stared at the monstrous creature, knowing they were out of time. He turned to his team, his voice harsh with urgency. "We need to overload the reactor core. It's the only way to destroy this thing before it's unleashed on the galaxy." His team nodded grimly, setting to work on the flagship's systems. But before they could make progress, a hail of blaster fire erupted from the entrance. Gruss stormed in, flanked by his elite guard. "I won't let you destroy my creation, human scum," Gruss snarled, leveling his weapon at Stephen. Stephen charged at Gruss, ducking and weaving through the blaster fire. He slammed into the warlord, sending them both crashing to the deck. They grappled fiercely, trading brutal blows. Stephen's fist connected with Gruss's jaw, snapping the Pakled's head back. Gruss retaliated with a vicious kick to Stephen's ribs, driving the air from his lungs. They rolled across the floor, locked in a deadly embrace. With a burst of strength, Stephen pinned Gruss, his forearm pressing against the warlord's throat. Gruss choked and sputtered, his eyes bulging. "It's over, Gruss," Stephen growled. "Your reign of terror ends now." But Gruss only laughed, a rasping, gurgling sound. "You fool, I'm just a pawn in a much larger game." Stephen hesitated, confusion flickering across his face. "What are you talking about?" "The Void Sovereign," Gruss whispered. "An ancient, malevolent being that feeds on the destruction of worlds. It's been manipulating us from the beginning, using the Pakleds to weaken the galaxy's defenses." A chill ran down Stephen's spine. "Why? To what end?" "So it can unleash its true horror upon the universe." Gruss's eyes gleamed with madness. "And thanks to you, it will soon be free." Stephen's grip tightened, his mind racing. He could end Gruss here and now, destroy the flagship and the creature. But if what the warlord said was true, the real threat would still be out there, waiting. He made his decision. Releasing Gruss, Stephen stood, offering his hand to the fallen warlord. "We don't have to be enemies. Help me stop the Void Sovereign. Together, we can save the galaxy." Gruss stared at Stephen's hand, suspicion warring with desperation in his eyes. Finally, he reached out and clasped it, allowing Stephen to pull him to his feet. "What's your plan, human?" Gruss asked warily. "We expose the truth," Stephen said. "Broadcast evidence of the Void Sovereign's existence to every corner of the galaxy. Rally the people against the real enemy." Gruss nodded slowly. "It could work, but we'll need proof." They set to work, scouring the flagship's databases for any scrap of information on the Void Sovereign. Finally, they found it. Records of the entity's manipulation, its true goals laid bare. Stephen's fingers flew across the console, transmitting the damning evidence on every frequency. "People of the galaxy, hear me now. The Void Sovereign is real, and it's been using us all as pawns in its twisted game. But together we can stop it. We must unite against this common threat before it's too late." As the message broadcast, a deep, guttural roar shook the flagship. The creature was stirring, its monstrous form breaking free of its containment. Alarms blared, the deck buckling beneath their feet. "We need to go now," Stephen shouted, grabbing Gruss and sprinting for the hangar bay. His team followed close behind, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. They barely made it to the shuttle, sealing the hatch just as the creature burst free. Its massive bulk tearing through the flagship's hull, Stephen punched the thrusters, rocketing away from the disintegrating ship. Behind them, the creature roared in fury, its cries echoing through the void as the flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light. But Stephen knew this was only the beginning. The Void Sovereign was still out there, and the real fight was yet to come. As the shuttle hurtled through space, Stephen turned to Gruss, a grim smile on his face. "Looks like we're in this together now. Let's just hope the galaxy is ready to stand with us." Stephen's message echoed through every comm channel in the galaxy. Slowly, reluctantly, the fractured races of the cosmos began to respond. The Galactic Alliance was the first to pledge its support, followed by the Terran Union, the Arachnid Syndicate, and even the Paclid Remnant. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy set aside their differences and united against the looming threat of the Void Sovereign. A massive fleet assembled in the Antares sector, the largest ever seen. Thousands of ships representing dozens of species gathered under a single banner. At their head was the USS Retribution, her hull scarred but unbroken, a symbol of humanity's resilience. On the bridge, Stephen stood tall, his uniform pressed and his eyes hard. Beside him, Gruss shifted uneasily, still not quite believing that he was working with his former enemy. The Pac-led warlord had provided vital intel on the Void Sovereign's location and capabilities, but trust between the two was tenuous at best. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump," Stephen ordered, his voice steady. "We're going to take the fight to the Sovereign, hit it hard and fast before it knows what's coming." The fleet surged forward, tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time. Reality shifted and warped around them as they hurtled through the hyperlanes, the stars stretching into long, luminous streaks. They emerged in a realm of madness and despair, a twisted mockery of the universe they knew. Eldritch energies crackled and pulsed, and the very laws of physics seemed to bend and break. At the center of it all, a vast, malevolent presence lurked, ancient and unspeakably powerful. The Void Sovereign. The entity lashed out with tendrils of pure darkness, ensnaring ships and dragging them into the abyss. Hideous abominations, born of the Sovereign's corrupted flesh, swarmed from rifts in space, latching onto hulls and tearing through armor like paper. The Allied fleet fought back with everything they had, lances of energy and salvos of missiles ripping through the void. Fighters danced and whirled, their pilots pushing themselves to the brink of human endurance as they dueled with the Sovereign's monstrous minions. But it wasn't enough. The Void Sovereign's power was too great, its hold on this realm absolute. Ships fell by the dozens, then the hundreds, swallowed up by the encroaching darkness. On the Retribution's bridge, Stephen watched the slaughter with growing desperation. They were losing. The Sovereign was just too strong. Unless... He turned to Gruss, his expression grim. "We need to get in close, it's the only way." The Pecklid nodded, understanding in his eyes. One last run for the fate of the galaxy. Stephen gathered his best and bravest, a small strike team of elite warriors from a dozen different species. They boarded a heavily armed shuttle and plunged into the heart of the maelstrom, weaving through the chaos with white-knuckled intensity. The Void Sovereign loomed before them, a cosmic horror beyond comprehension. Its very presence sapped at their sanity, threatening to unmake their minds. But they pushed forward, fighting through waves of eldritch abominations with grim determination. They breached the entity's outer shell, blasting their way into its fathomless depths. The interior was a labyrinth of pulsing flesh and twisted biomechanical horrors, each more nightmarish than the last. Stephen and his team pushed deeper, battling past legions of corrupted creatures and autonomous defense systems. They took losses, good soldiers falling to the Sovereign's insidious influence, but they kept going, driven by desperation and sheer force of will. At last, they reached the core, a pulsing nexus of dark energy that housed the Void Sovereign's essence. The entity lashed out with psychic power, trying to crush their minds, but Stephen stood firm. He could feel the Sovereign's malign presence boring into his skull, seeking to dominate his will, but he fought back with every fiber of his being. It was a battle of pure willpower, a contest of souls. Stephen poured everything he had into resisting the Sovereign's influence, drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. Beside him, Grus and the others did the same, their minds linked in a desperate gestalt. But the Void Sovereign was strong, and its power only seemed to grow. One by one, Stephen's team began to falter, their wills crumbling under the onslaught. Even Stephen could feel himself weakening, his resolve starting to fray. Then Grus stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination. "Go!" he shouted at Stephen. "Finish this! I'll hold it off!" The Paclid threw himself at the heart of the Sovereign's power, his body and mind dissolving into the maelstrom of dark energy. For a moment the entity's focus shifted, its terrible presence lessening as it absorbed Grus into itself. It was the opening Stephen needed. With a final burst of strength, he raised the weapon the Allied scientists had created, a lance of pure white energy forged from the combined knowledge and technology of a dozen civilizations. He fired, pouring everything he had into the beam. The lance struck the core, and for a moment the universe held its breath. Then, with a roar that shook the foundations of reality, the Void Sovereign shattered, its essence exploding outward in a cataclysmic wave of energy. Stephen and his surviving team members were hurled back, their shuttle barely escaping the blast. Around them the Sovereign's realm began to collapse, the nightmare dimension folding in on itself now that its master was destroyed. The Retribution and the remnants of the Allied fleet limped back to normal space, their hulls battered and their crews shell-shocked. They had won, but the cost had been staggering. Countless ships lost, entire species decimated, and so many brave souls sacrificed. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. The Paclid remnant finally free of the Void. Sovereign's corrupting influence struggled to come to terms with the horrors they had unleashed. Many of the other races were hesitant to forgive, the wounds of the conflict still too raw. And Stephen was hailed as a hero, the savior of the galaxy. But as he stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring out into the endless expanse of space, he felt only a hollow sense of loss. So many friends, so many comrades, gone forever. Grus, who had given his life to buy Stephen that one critical moment. The weight of their sacrifices hung heavy on his soul. In the end, Stephen slipped away, disappearing into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy. Some said he was seeking solace, trying to find peace in the quiet corners of the universe. Others whispered that he was haunted by the ghosts of those he couldn't save, driven into self-imposed exile by his own guilt. Only one thing was certain. The galaxy had been saved, but for Stephen, the price had been almost too much to bear. And as he stood alone on the Retribution's bridge, gazing out into the infinite void, a part of him couldn't help but wonder, had it been worth it? You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.